Hey everybody, it's Andy Timmons. Welcome back to Melodic Muse, my column for Guitar World magazine. And we're going to look at my song Grace that's on the new Electric Truth record. I wrote this tune after seeing the Jimi Hendrix Experience tour, meaning one of the later versions of the Jimi Hendrix Experience where they had all these great guitar players. But most notably for me that night, I got to meet Billy Cox and his wonderful wife Brenda. And in a conversation, the word grace came up, and I really took it to heart, and I went home and wrote this tune. So it is certainly very Jimi Hendrix inspired, but also inspired by Billy and Brenda Cox. Kicking off the song Grace is a really pretty simple kind of Jimi Hendrix-y chordal riff, essentially. And the chords of this intro and beginning of the verse is C major to E minor. Ground control to major tone. That's not what I was hearing in my head, but that came to mind just now as I'm strumming the chords. But here's the basic riff is in C major. I just play this kind of, stock bar chord. Seemingly a lot of the classic Hendrixy riffs we might just, but I'm actually hammering on the G string, on the D string, on the A string, and actually on the E string. So it's a little extended in that way. So C major, slide up. And when I get down to that E string, low E. And so I'm keeping that low E string going. And then just carrying on a pentatonic dyad. So I'm thinking of E minor. So we've got that D and G, that's that seventh and third of that E minor, up to the A and E. Yeah. Kind of hearing that sound. And then down to the root or the tonic of that B and E. So there's a little slide. I'm just articulating that one. So I'm getting a lot of mileage out of that one articulation. Let me play it, that riff one more time slowly. So the low E string's not ringing like I thought it was. I do mute that. Might get a little messy. But now there's also a little bit of swing to this. There's, it's kind of like how Little Wing has evolved over time. A lot of people, it might have started kind of straight eighth with Jimmy, but Stevie Ray and Lukather started swinging it quite a bit, right? And this has got a bit of that lilt to it. Not too much. Every then, and that's partially the Hendrix and Stevie influence, but then I've played a lot of jazz over the years too, so sometimes there might be an implied swing in some of my phrasing. So that's the basic chords, that's the intro riff. Let's look at the melody. The melodic content of the verse, we're still going from C major to E minor. That repeats, but then it goes to F major, to C sharp major, or D flat if you want to call it. Back to F major, C over E, or maybe it's kind of implied F major, I would say C over E, and then to B half diminished, which is the 7th chord of going back to C major. So it does, the chorus, I mean, this verse modulates just for a moment to the key of F major. Thinking that kind of as a home base through the flat 6, call it C sharp, call it D flat, then back to F, then walking down to this B half diminished, and that resolves nicely into the C of the first chorus. We'll get there. So looking at the melodic content of that over the C major, I think it starts on the G. So you hear that C major to E minor going by just in the note choice. It's right up the C major pentatonic, or just major scale pentatonic. But that slide from that D down to the B, you really hear the flavor of that E minor. And then resolving to an E, but that's the third of that C major. And again, with one of these simple melodies, you know, it's not complicated as far as it being a dexterous, choppy kind of riff, but it's really about the articulation and the emotion that I can get out of a simple phrase. Just right there, there's so much dynamic range. So it's good to have a sound that's not too overdriven. I've got a blues driver type pedal engaged. So if I lighten up, it's going to clean up. And if I dig in, it's going to get a little dirty. So I like to, on a song like this, I like to have a sound that's not too compressed and not too overdriven, that limits, you know, the sound that I'm getting just out of the string. You know, there's quite a bit of tone that's just coming from the natural, my pick on that string and with the fingers. So just kind of a little signpost to remind you to really listen for that detail. And that's where a lot of the work really comes here, and where a lot of the beauty can come from. And that, just the way that I'm sliding into that, there's so much emotion that can happen. So once I articulate that C, I'm sliding up to the D and then sliding down to the B, all with just the one articulation. And even as I'm sustaining that note, I'm rolling the volume down, just because as I'm recognizing, I just want it to be a bit more delicate. And then very much a question and answer. I'm stating a phrase. Answer. Again. So it's kind of an A, B prime, almost. A, B, A prime. Now over the E minor this time, I bend from that G to A. Then a little blues lick, resolving to the C. But now it's We've changed to an F major chord. And again, picking up underneath that B to try to get this much harmonic content. And then over that F. So kind of, it's a bluesy sound. And then I resolve to an F, but then I harmonically change underneath that to a C sharp major chord or D flat major. And that's a sound that I'll use compositionally quite a bit. It's the tonic of that key that we've modulated to. But by changing the harmony, that's now the third of that. It's F major, but now I'm on D flat. So the tonic note becomes the third of that chord, and it's, again, kind of gives it really an emotional detour, so to speak. So if I'm here, and I play off that melody, off that, it's almost like thinking of it B minor, but D flat major. Another one of those up-picked harmonic-y bends to an A, but now that's over F. And and that's kind of the peak of that verse that sets up the chorus modulating back to C. But I really like that, getting to that D flat chord or C sharp, because we've been in C. How did we get here? That's a pretty unusual place to get to. But having set it up because it relates in a way that we're familiar with. We're so used to hearing. We love that. That's a rock and roll staple, that flat 6 major up to another major as a tonic. But so I get back, which, here's one of those moments where I hear exactly what was going through my mind. Hopefully not in a plagiaristic way, but we just lost the great Gary Brooker, and of course he's the composer of this beautiful piece called Whiter Shade of Pale. And so that's one of those elements where that might have been influenced by my thinking of that song. It's not that melody, but the melodic intervallic leap, it harkens to that. But I love that. I love having a bit of a part of a song of mine that is very much an homage or a tribute to something that I've loved before. There's bits of that all through my music, and if you study any of your favorite artists, you'll find their heroes in there too. The melody in Grace, I think, really is a good way to study, what we call tension and release, or you question and answer. Every phrase that happens tends to make sense with what came before it and what's going to happen after it. That's the goal, and that's something that I feel happens naturally. The more that we write music, the more that we improvise. There's, at least for me, there's a great desire for things to make sense, and to tell a story. You hear a lot of guys talk about, well, you got to tell a story. Well, I just hear notes. What do you mean? Well, if you really kind of analyze phrase by phrase, and you start to recognize, they do make sense together, because this has elements of what happened before it, and then it's taking it somewhere else. And then that, it's very much it's a conversation, and again, a kind of a dialogue, even if it's me speaking to myself, but I'm trying to communicate to you. In those moments, some type of phrase and musicality that will be, impactful, not just, hey, that guy plays guitar, and I like that sound, or whatever. Hopefully it's an overall story, an overall arc. Even within the line, you hear the articulation, how things are being shaped to try to really make a really, understandable statement on its own, but then, again, making sense with everything else. Tension and release, the way of the world, and the way of great music.